Welcome back to As Told by Zink with your host, Samantha. I'm in studio with Sydney. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming. Did you have a relaxing Memorial Day weekend?
I actually was working in the studio.
Oh.
Yeah, we're starting actually a new yoga studio in Malibu. So me and my fiance were literally mopping the floors of the studio all day. It was beautiful. We were putting our love and prana into it.
Yeah, you have to, especially in the beginning. It's no days off.
No days
But wait,
off.
when I met you, so we met a few years ago at a birthday dinner, Nana's birthday dinner.
Yes.
Were you dating this guy? You were dating someone. It was this guy.
I was.
Who you're now engaged to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so that's sweet.
I remember you were dating
really
somebody and then talking about someone that you were dating.
Yep.
Now, how did he propose?
So, I'll start first. We met in Peru, which is a really beautiful story. And, that's his story to tell as well. But, fast forward, and he proposed on Thanksgiving in front of our family on our ranch up north. So it was really special.
That's sweet. On Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
You don't hear that one.
I know. Usually that's like the college story where you come home from college and you break up with your boyfriend.
Oh, yeah.
On Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I've never seen the proposal on Thanksgiving. I mean, I love it.
Yeah, it was sweet. It was very sweet.
Yeah.
During a cacao ceremony in front of all of our friends and family with a cup of cacao in my hand. So.
Wait, so do you have your family do like cacao ceremonies and breath work and sound baths? And were they always like open-minded to this? Or did you have to educate?
I think for most of us who find ourselves in these, modalities, yoga, breath work, cacao, we fall in love with it and then we want to share it with everyone, including the people who we love most, which is our family. And oftentimes that first initial sharing is kind of like forcing it down their throat.
Yeah.
And they're like, get this away from me, right? And you think that it's the best thing in the world and you want to save them and you have this Christ complex and you're like, my life is better. I'm holier than thou. I found the way. And your family thinks it's really fucking annoying, And so that was me in the first couple of years of my spiritual practice. And I would invite them to all my classes. I would make cacao on Christmas and they would pretend to sip it because it tasted very bitter. And I refused to put any honey and milk in it at the time. So we've gone through all the iterations of that. And now that I've been able to release the judgment, right, of all people and myself, they're actually so open to it. And they love coming to my sound baths. They love coming to my cacao ceremonies. They love supporting me. And it all started when I didn't force it onto them.
That makes sense.
It's very beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, especially families who are very religious. And once you start going like a spiritual route, it gets like a little like woo-woo to them, right? Like, are you okay? Are you on drugs?
Right.
And then you're like, no, I found the way.
Right.
But it does sort of tie into religion as well. It's just sort of like this, instead of going to church and reading the Bible, it is just different forms of healing.
Totally. And different forms of finding yourself and connection. And, I personally was raised Catholic and it was amazing. Like I found a connection to God and to Jesus. And, I found a connection to nature where, I was a kid and I could just lie on the grass and look up at the sun and be like, wow, like I'm so amazed at the miracle of life. And then as I grew older, I could find that connection in so many different ways, not just in a church. Yeah. And when I explained this to my family, they got it. They understood. And I'm very blessed that I have understanding family in that way.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And how did you even embark on this new path or journey? Was there something like, was your life just sort of going downhill? Did you meet people who introduced it to you? There's always that one moment that you look back where everything changed.
Yeah, for me, it was really the start of my 20s and I'd gone through a breakup. Usually it's something that shocks you, right? Usually it's a rock bottom or, the dark night of the soul. And for me, it was a really bad breakup and my heart was broken. And instead of hitting rock bottom, it brought me to, what I like to say and what my teacher would always say is it brought me to rock edge. So it brought me to the edge of my life, and I was able to look in on my life and be like, whoa, this is not how I want to live. This is not the energy that I want around myself. This doesn't feel good. Like, who do I want to be? What do I want to create in my life? And so that rock bottom, rock edge allowed me to have the first clear look at myself. And then from there, it's layers and steps and journeys and 2 steps back and 1 step forward and a little swivel around, and you find yourself in so many ways. And it's been a journey.
And in the beginning, were you looking into things yourself? Did you meet somebody who was a bit more spiritual? Like, how did you get introduced to this way of life?
So in college, it's so sweet. My best friend, she's a dancer, and we didn't have any classes together. And she said, I really want to take a class with you. Let's do an elective. Let's do yoga. And I'd never done yoga before. I was open to it, but I had no interest in yoga. So I signed up for her, and I showed up on the first day of class, and it wasn't just a yoga class. It was a semester of diving deep into Kundalini Yoga, which is a whole nother modality of yoga that is a little bit more woo-woo to those who have no idea what it is. So I dove deep in college for a whole semester, learning about mantras, learning about the chakra system, learning about vibration and Kriya Yoga. And I just remember the feeling of practicing and coming out of the practice and just being in this state that I'd never experienced before, a state of peace, acceptance, and just knowing everything's good. Everything's going to be okay. Even if my life was chaotic, even if I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, even if I didn't know who I wanted to be, even I didn't know, what the weekend would bring or who I would date or, who I would go to a formal with, it was just okay. It was good. I was good. And I followed that feeling, and I went deep with Kundalini Yoga, very deep.
I'm shocked your college offered that, first of all.
Me too. I don't think it was actually on the curriculum. I think my teacher actually just taught it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like a secret class.
I learned about Kundalini Yoga in 2017 when I was starting my business, my entrepreneurship. And I would listen. I sort of went 2 different ways with podcasts and educating myself. The spiritual route of, manifesting a successful business, and then obviously the business route.
Business.
And someone had mentioned Kundalini Yoga, and I was living in New York City at the time, and I was 27, and I just signed up for the class, and I would go once a week, and it was not what you think it is at all. Like when you think of yoga and totally different. Yeah. Like you are out of your comfort zone.
Definitely.
Like we were just chanting and dancing and doing very interesting breaths, and it was really good for me because I would go alone, and I just felt like I was sort of doing something that I wasn't comfortable doing.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
When you push yourself and you do something that's not comfortable, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I can do that. I can do hard things. That's cool. I'm pretty awesome.
You just feel kind of silly, but you do leave sort of this high.
Yeah.
This natural high.
Definitely. And Kundalini Yoga is, it's a modality and a practice that works with the most subtlest forms of our energy. And it's not just a yoga class. It incorporates mantra and chanting, dynamic postures and Kriya Yoga, the sound healing aspect, also the meditation and the mindfulness. It incorporates all of it in pranayama and breathwork, and it focuses you. It really creates all these points of focus so you can then expand your energy, you can direct it, you can stimulate it and sustain that energy throughout the day. So it's really powerful.
Yeah, I loved it. Now that I think about it, it's very sort of under the radar.
Yeah. it's
I
not
never,
as
I don't think
popular.
anyone knows what, like a lot of people don't know what it is. And I
Yeah.
don't hear anyone talking about it.
Yeah, we
You got to bring it
say,
back.
yeah, we got to bring it back. Yeah, we say in Kundalini that, just like all rivers lead to the ocean, all yoga ends up rising your Kundalini or stimulating and helping the Kundalini rise.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful practice.
Yeah, I do love that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to mention, so you are a practitioner of,
Yes.
Breath work, meditation, and sound bathing. And now you have your own yoga studio that you're opening up in Malibu, which is amazing. It looks beautiful. I checked it out on Instagram
Thank
for
you.
your photos and the whole vibe that you're going with. Are you going to just do, what kind of yoga are you going to offer?
We'll offer all types of yoga. So
Kundalini?
yes, Kundalini.
What?
Yep, I'll be teaching Kundalini Yoga. We'll
That's
also
awesome.
offer vinyasa and hatha yoga, yin yoga, sound baths, sound healings, cacao ceremonies, ritual, and all sorts of wellness events. So not just yoga, but it's a wellness center.
Wellness center. Okay. And you'll also maybe be partnering with people to host
Absolutely. Workshops, events, ecstatic dances,
Oh my gosh, so fun.
panels, speaker events,
Yeah, that's
community
awesome.
dinners.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And you're doing that with your fiance.
Yes.
I love it. How is working with somebody that you are engaged to?
I love it. I mean, there are definitely challenges.
Yeah.
The productivity is impeccable, that's for sure, because we wake up working on the business, we go to sleep working on the business. And then, also the cons, we want to make time for ourselves and we want to take breaks from the business and take ourselves out on dates where we're not talking about, the next marketing strategy for the business or the next milestone or goal point. But I love it. It's building a kingdom with your king. And that's the type of relationship that I've always wanted and I've dreamed of. And I think everyone is different, but for me, that's the dream. I'm building an empire.
Yeah, I love it. And I do think it's awesome working with your partner or starting a business, but you can't force it.
No.
Don't you agree that it has to just feel super organic, not like,
Absolutely.
oh, we need to start something, like let's get out the paper and figure it out right now. Like I think it really has to flow to you and
Absolutely.
you guys think of it together and it just be so natural.
Yeah, and that happened with us too. When we met in Peru, I was leading international retreats and teacher trainings in Peru and travel retreats. I was very nomadic for, 3 or 4 years. And when we met, we just fell into it. We started hosting retreats together and transformational experiences. And then we finally moved back to the US and we opened up a yoga studio up north, which is a whole story.
So you guys have done this before?
Yep.
Okay.
We
so
did.
This was not new to you.
We did. Yes.
All right.
Right now, we've actually been involved and worked together in 3 different businesses. Wow. Yeah.
Crazy. I love it. I mean, it's fun because so what are your strengths in the business and what are his?
He has an incredible vision, so he can see big picture. And he's also very direct. So, managing big teams and working with people, he can really move people around in a really artful way, Me, I have the vision, it's more detail oriented. So, design and getting tasks done and operations. And then together, we just dance together. It just flows so beautifully. And we're kind of both jack of all trades. So we play off of, everything. We do our own media and marketing, our own social media, our own design. We design all of our own logos and color schemes. We make our own websites. We hire people. We write our own copy, which is fun. But eventually, I'm looking to delegate.
To outsource, yeah.
Which is, the next step.
So you can focus on the healing part.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's I love when I do any sort of, I guess just what comes to mind is the sound bath. And there's that couple that, was it 5 Senses
Yeah,
Collective?
the 5 Sense Collective. Yes.
Yeah, I did one of their sound baths in
Awesome.
Malibu in their spot. And just seeing
How
like
was it?
couples work together, I don't know, because I feel like a ton of people when they do the sound bath, they're like, I just want to welcome love into my life. And then when
Mm-hmm.
you are being healed by love, I think that, I don't know, it's just something about that. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
well, there's two people in love healing me. And so I will be drawn to love or a magnet for love. It's
That's
just,
beautiful.
yeah, it's nice
Yeah.
seeing the couples and just like building things too.
Yeah, I think when you're creating community too, to see a really powerful, inspired couple,
Mm-hmm.
it really does bring people together in a really nuanced, nice way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you about your retreats, but something just popped in my mind. So, as a couple, you are constantly learning and growing. And obviously, you can be in this practice and still have disagreements and fights and issues. What
Definitely.
are some practices that you do as a couple that keep your relationship healthy and moving forward and evolving?
Well, I think the main one is just always telling each other the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that's a hard truth of, you know, calling someone out, or not calling out, but calling someone forward in, you know, hey, I see what you're doing there. Let's talk about it. Let's not
Mm-hmm.
avoid, and communication. So that's been the two biggest things that have helped us in our relationship. And it's not easy, right? The truth is not always easy to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm speaking for myself, right? You know, when I'm defensive and he calls me out on being defensive, sometimes I get more defensive. But I
Yep.
see it. I see it. I'm aware of it. And that's the practice, is awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And outside of just those daily habits and practices, do you guys do any sort of healing together?
I think for me, that is healing. Having those deep
Even though
conversations.
they're maybe little everyday things, they're the
Yeah.
most meaningful and helpful for you.
And sometimes those little everyday conversations that are
Mm-hmm.
hard are some of the hardest conversations you'll have all month, right?
Mm-hmm.
With someone that you love, if they see you, if they really look at you and they see all of your patterns, all of your traumas, all of the things that trigger you, and they call it out. Like, that's hard. It's hard to be
Mm-hmm.
called out by someone you love, by someone that you want to love you. And those are hard conversations, and it's a profound practice if you can call each other forward in truth, in a loving, compassion way, right? Not pointing a finger and blaming and not criticizing, but really coming together in truth. It is the most profound practice I have ever done in my life, beyond the yoga, beyond the sound healing, beyond the mantra and the breath work, and, you know, fill in the blank with whatever you do to
Yeah.
heal. Having those honest conversations, that is hard work. That is spiritual work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do, to your point, I do feel like there's a way to go about it in a relationship
Yeah.
where you're not bringing someone down. So, for
Absolutely.
example, I feel like social media is always an issue for relationships these days. And instead of, if your girlfriend, boyfriend, fiance
Mhm.
notices that you're doing something on social media and says, "Hey, you know what? This makes me like a little uncomfortable." So it's
Mhm.
just an idea that's popped
Yeah.
in my head that everyone has gone through.
Mhm.
Instead of the other person being calling you insecure
Mhm.
or that you need to work on your insecurities or your trust, it's more so being like, "Okay, I hear you.
Mhm.
I understand. It makes you feel uncomfortable. Thank you for coming to me in this sort of manner, not attacking me. I will remove or not do that anymore." So
Yeah.
but I feel like so many times women are afraid to tell men because they're like, "Oh, well, you're just insecure or you
Right.
have problems that you need to work through."
Right. And a lot of times it's a lot deeper than that. You
Yeah.
know, like that's the classic script. That's the script that we always hear about and that we've all probably had in our teens and 20s and in relationships. And can we move beyond that script? Can we be like, hey, let's talk about where this is coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's talk about, is it insecurity? Where is it coming from? Do you not feel appreciated in the relationship? Am I not making you feel loved? How do you receive love? You know, let's talk about that. And then the insecurity disappears. So it's really finding the root of it together. And sometimes it's owning your shit. Like, hey, yeah, I am insecure.
Yeah.
And that's okay to own too. And then you can go beyond that. Once you get to the truth of that, you can go beyond it and get to the deeper truths that then transform, right? That deep, deep seed that maybe neither of you have even named out loud. And then you name it and you're like, whoa, oh, that's where that came from. And it takes truth on both parties to get there. And when you get there, it's amazing. It's hard though.
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes the other person will attack or,
Yep.
you know, put a label on it, insecurity.
Right.
And it's hard to find an understanding. But I love the questions that you just said of, you know, just sort of having that deeper conversation and not being attacking on both sides.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
And
it's like take it a step back and just
exactly. And
reword.
realizing, you know, if someone's saying, hey, are you being insecure?
Yeah.
It's different than being like, hey, you're wrong, you're insecure, right? And there's two different energies to that. And it's coming from a different place. One's coming from a heart place, being like, wow, I see you. I don't want you to be insecure because I love you. You're my partner. You're my queen. I don't want you to be insecure. Let's talk about this. What's making you feel that way? Let's get to the root. I want to solve it. I want to come to that place, rather than someone who is avoidant and blaming and just trying to run away from the issues and not look at themselves, where they point and say, no, you're wrong. You're doing this. Fix it. Right? It's totally different energies around saying something that might sound the same. And so that's where the subtleties of communication come through. And a lot of people will say, well, I'm just saying the truth. I'm speaking my truth. And you hear that cliche thing and people use it to gaslight all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not cool.
And it's like you have to get through. And this is something in the beginning of a relationship with boundaries.
Yeah.
So you have to learn the communication before
Totally.
you're engaged or you have bigger issues in the relationship outside of social media.
Absolutely.
You know, it's good to sort of nail
Absolutely.
down this communication and how to like properly speak to somebody.
Yes.
Instead of, I
yes.
just feel like everyone just always thinks the other person's attacking.
Yeah.
And maybe they are with how they're presenting their issue
Right.
or
Yeah.
question, right?
And that's something I still work on too, is not taking things personally and putting down my walls and just opening my heart when it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why when we do uncomfortable things, it is so rewarding,
That
because,
is true.
you know, by the end of it, we've opened ourselves up and we've relaxed into a space where our nervous system was in hyperdrive. And then we relax into the chaos and we realize, wow, we're okay. We're good. We got this no matter what. And it's very empowering.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So I also saw that you have your retreats. Is that with your fiance as well?
Yes.
Exciting. It all ties together, right?
Yes.
And
totally.
how long have you been doing? Is this new? Have you been doing it for a few years now?
Yeah, we've been doing it for a few years. I've been doing it for a few years before him as well. And yeah, taking people to Peru on plant medicine retreats, on travel retreats, to go see culture in different places. I've done retreats in Hawaii and, you know, and I've also assisted retreats in different countries, in Guatemala and India. So it's beautiful. You know, traveling is also one way that I open my eyes up to the world and different perspectives. And I really do think that it's allowed me to see the infinite ways that life is lived and not judge any of those ways.
Yeah.
Which is the biggest thing biggest piece of advice is, let's just not judge others. You know, if I could give one piece of advice, just don't judge people.
Yeah.
You can discern. You can be discerning, right, off of energy that you want to be around. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But the judgment is something that I see very prevalent right now, even, you know, in the world. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, definitely a lot of judgment. And so you're saying when you get a group together, that's just something that you're trying to teach of like we're all coming together and different
Definitely.
levels of our journey, and
Definitely.
to just be welcoming of each other and not to like see a person of how they look or what they're doing, just to be completely open and accepting for how the group is, how every individual is.
Absolutely. And I think that, whenever I have a retreat or a retreat group, every single person is almost divinely orchestrated and placed in that group for a specific reason. They all have a little piece of the puzzle or a nugget of wisdom to share with the group, or they mirror something with someone else in the group. And of course, these are microcosms that mirror the macrocosm. So you'll see these little dynamics in these small retreat groups play out the same as in your life. So then you get to work with your triggers, you get to work with your judgments, you get to work with your traumas and how someone shows up and might remind you of someone in your life. And these transformational experiences, they are transformational because of the group working together and that group consciousness working and weaving together. Like the group is necessary for it, right? You're going to have a different experience if you just went by yourself. The group energy everyone brings their own unique energy to that. And there's this alchemy of healing, of growing, of conversation, of coming up to edges together and witnessing it together. It's it's crazy.
It is crazy to think that everybody was placed in that group for a reason to all sort of help energetically.
Definitely. And I believe that with life too. I believe that every character in my story has been placed there. And, at the same time, I believe in my sovereign free will and that I'm choosing, where I'm going, and I'm directing my will towards a direction and towards what is in alignment with my soul's dharma. But sometimes, you got to have that character, the villain, right? Come in to hold up the mirror so you can learn who you are in a new way. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm going to sort of take this. And so I told Sydney when we were coming on that we were doing things a little differently, and I want to have stories that resonate. So I'm thinking of what 20-something-year-old Samantha would want to take out of this. And I used to have toxic boyfriends, especially in college, especially in my 20s, honestly, even at 28, where I'm like, what, and my mom would always say, a reason, a season, or a lifetime, this person is in your life for a reason. And you meet people, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a partner, that they're so toxic and they're destroying your life at that time. What is your take on that? I'm going to just throw the wild cards at you.
Yeah, keep them coming. I love these questions, right? This is why we're here, to have the hard conversations and dissect these concepts. And, for me, number one, like, we are not victims. Like, I'm not a victim in my life. You're not a victim in your life. Yet at the same time, I'm not pointing my finger at you and saying, you're attracting this. Like, fix your energy, like, clean it up. You're attracting these, because there's also people who would say that. And for me, I think that it's this beautiful combination of karma and dharma. And so how I define karma, it's a little different, right? I don't think that karma's a bitch, right? I have people say that. For me, karma is just the universe kind of hip checking you and redirecting you onto your path to help you find your dharma again. So karma shows up in different ways. And it could be, you losing your job, or someone doing something to you that shocks you, right? That, or a tragedy, or a redirection that looks like a rejection. And all of these things and these energies, I believe are karma that's redirecting you back to your dharma. And in Kundalini, we say when you're in your dharma, there's no more karma. Because karma is just the energy trying to get you back on your path. And sometimes that looks like chaos. Sometimes it looks like chaos. So in my mind, I truly, deeply feel that the universe is happening for us. It's not happening to us. So when that happens and you're in a toxic relationship or a toxic friendship, and you realize that the universe is happening for you, you realize that you are sovereign, that you have free will, that you can have whatever life you choose, and you realize that this person is not this evil villain character, but it's just another soul trying to figure out their shit, you start to get some more perspective, right? And all of these knowings and all of these subtle awarenesses start to elevate you to a place where you can look down onto the relationship and onto the friendship and decide from that place, is this what I want? Right? It brings you to the edge again, right? Like I said, in my life, that's how I started out my journey. I was brought to the edge, right? Rock bottom, rock edge, and I could look in from a new perspective. Because when you're in that relationship, when you're in that toxic friendship, you don't see it like that oftentimes, because you're in the entanglements. You're like in the spaghetti of all the energy, and it's all around you. It's all you see. It's all you feel. It's all you're experiencing. You don't know any different. It just is, right? It just is. And of course we have love for those people because we're human and we can love anything and anyone if we keep our heart open. It's so beautiful. That's why I love being a human being. But sometimes you got to separate yourself out of the Maya, right? Out of the entanglements. And when you look in with clarity and you can see it from a different perspective, then it becomes, oh, this isn't what I want. And then you leave the relationship, or you set the boundary, or you realize that you deserve something more. But it takes awareness first, right? And then the actions are oftentimes easier than actually getting the awareness. The awareness is the hard part.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. You can't get it when someone tells it to you either. You know, if a parent or a friend says, that friendship, that's a shitty friendship, or I don't think that that's a good partner for you. You can't, it doesn't get through to you. You know, it will never get through to you until we have our awareness, until that flip switches in our consciousness and the light turns on, and then we see, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
And that happens to various degrees, right? And it might not happen just overnight, but the awareness starts to grow. It starts to grow. And a teacher shared this really sweet story of these women in India, and they dye their clothing, right? The way that they dye their clothing, they take the fabric and they dip it in the dye, and then they take it to the Ganga, the river, and they dip the fabric in the river and they wash the dye out that first time. And about 90% of that dye comes out of the fabric. And then they take it back, they dip it in the dye, they leave it out in the sun, and then they wash the fabric again in the river. And about 50% of the color comes out. Then they take the fabric back and they dip it in the dye, let it dry in the sun, wash it in the river. And this time, maybe only 10% of the dye comes out. And the fabric starts to take on that color, just as we start to embody that awareness and the knowings that we learn from each relationship, from each fight, from each toxic situation. We're learning and learning and learning. And it's the same. It's the same with that process of dyeing the fabric. And that's okay. If we keep making the same mistake, it's not a mistake. It's just the process of coming into that embodiment that's more permanent, right? That is what embodiment is. Not just knowing something, but embodying.
That's so true. And what is your advice on, I guess, just being more in touch with your awareness instead of just, I feel like the younger you are, especially, you're just sort of, with any sort of issue, it's like you're accepting of things and you're more forgiving. And then you get to a certain age where you're like, I'm so wise and I'm so aware. How can you be in touch with that awareness at a younger age, or like constantly doing something, checking yourself maybe
Mm-hmm.
to be
Yeah.
aware of, like, look, checking your friendships, your family, your relationships. Maybe it's like a consistent practice that you take a minute and you look around and you're like,
Yeah.
is everything, am I happy in all of these
Yeah.
relationships?
Yeah, I think you're right. That simple practice
Yeah.
of just
I just totally made that
taking
up too.
space, just taking
Yeah.
space, how
Mhm.
many younger teens even take the time to reflect and journal, right? Journaling is such an amazing practice, to just
Yeah.
journal about what's going on. In that way, you're reflecting on your life in a way that brings it to a piece of paper and a moment in time where you can even go back and read where you were at and see the growth. So journaling is a huge way to start.
Mhm.
And then having the conversations. If your friends can't have the conversations, finding someone who can talk it through with you and who can listen to you, whether that's, your parents or an older mentor or an older sibling, someone who has a little experience, because it helps when you hear stories, because you can learn from other people's stories and other
Yeah.
people's mistakes. And that's the beauty of it.
And if you are just going to continue making your mistakes, then you're still wringing out the dye.
Yeah, and that's okay. You're still working on that beautiful, rich color of who you are, and that's just the process.
Yeah.
And if you can accept that and not be so hard on yourself, wow. Oh, you can just, like, where your shoulders can relax. Like, I feel even just saying that, my shoulders are relaxing, and we can rest in the fact that you're good. You're
Yeah.
exactly where you're meant to be. Life is difficult. It's challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And that's life. And how we show up and react to that and navigate life, that's where the magic is. And that's what we have control over, right? That's the free will.
So true.
Yeah.
And quickly, how fast we move on from things.
Yeah.
Where people don't realize that. And now for me, I realize you're going to be really, no matter if you leave something that is no longer serving you,
Yep.
aka something that was toxic,
Yep.
and you're like, this is the end of the world. And it's funny, you give it a month and it's just yesterday's news.
Yeah.
And you've moved on. That I've learned that the older I get, that
Yes.
everything, those feelings are so temporary.
Yes. Everything's temporary. The only constant is change. And these past 2 years have been the hardest years of my life, like, quite literally the hardest 2.5 years of my life. And I've had to let go of a lot. I've grieved, moving on and turning chapters. And it's been beautiful, right? Understanding and practicing the act of surrender has been so incredible in my life. Like, I thought I knew what surrender was. I thought I knew what letting go was. And then you experience, another deeper, profound way to surrender in life. And you will always learn these lessons in new levels, right? It's like a video game. You learn self-love 1 year, and then the next year you're like, oh, I thought I loved myself. And you peel that next layer of the onion and you learn another, level of self-love. And that's how I feel. I've been working with self-love and surrender for the past 2.5 years, and it's been so beautiful.
Yeah, the surrender is what I have been practicing or learning as of recently, the past year. When things happen, I'm like, I'm fine. Like, I know that this is happening for a reason, especially owning a business. I've learned to surrender, and with the changes that come with owning a business, more so I'm learning than ever that people will come, people will go, things will happen. And instead of freaking out, as young Samantha would do, I'm just like, as you said, this is happening for me, not to me. And I'm just like, all right, universe, whatever you have in store, I am welcoming of it. And it's very peaceful. I'm at peace.
It's beautiful.
just by being able to surrender. And
Right.
I feel like that one change in my life has brought me peace.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
The
because
acceptance.
I'm so accepting of everything. Yeah, a little too
Yeah.
accepting. I'm like, all right, come, you go, do whatever you please. It's such a beautiful thing. Do you have any sort of advice? I don't know how I got to this place, truly, but do you have, because I think being accepting of whatever life gives you is the key here. Do you have any advice to people on how to get to that place? Because you yourself said you even had to learn how to surrender.
Definitely. Yeah, to get to acceptance is a difficult process. And actually, this is something that Joshua, my fiance, shared with me is the power of appreciation. So to appreciate something and what it's doing for your life gets you to that acceptance. And from that acceptance, you find the peace. And in that peace, you find that expansiveness that allows you to find new miracles and new doorways and walk through that new door and start that new project, meet that new person. And that's where the magic is, right? The magic of manifestation happens in that state of peace and that high vibration. It doesn't happen in the complaining and the fear and the vibrations of not feeling enough and the constriction. So appreciation, right? When something happens, you appreciate that it's happening for you, and practicing appreciation for all things, I think, helps you move into acceptance.
Appreciation, yeah.
Which is very different than gratitude.
Oh, wait, I was just going to say, just like being grateful. Explain.
Right.
All right, take me back.
Right. So because gratitude, right? Gratitude, you're thankful for something, right?
Yes.
You're saying thank you. Appreciation, you're seeing a whole situation and you're putting your energy into it to appreciate it, right? To make more of it, right? Appreciation, to appreciate something. So it's exponentially expanding into more of that thing.
Yes.
So when you look at, like, here's an example, right? Maybe you're in a really toxic friendship and, you are, instead of blaming or feeling sad about the relationship ending or moving into a new type of way of relating, you appreciate the lesson, right? You appreciate that you're moving into more alignment. You're appreciating that happened, and then you get more of that, right? You get more of the aligned friends. You get more of the redirection into Dharma. Right? The energy is growing. You're growing the energy. You're expanding the energy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Not just saying thank you.
Yes. Like, okay, like I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for this podcast. But when in those situations and experiences, yes, you're grateful that you had them, but you sort of move it into the feeling of appreciation.
Yes.
So then it puts you more in line with where you're meant to be.
Yeah,
and you're supposed to be around.
You're growing it, right? You appreciate this podcast so much that it grows and it expands into new conversations, into new energy. That appreciation will grow it.
I love that. Yeah, that is great advice on it. Nailed it.
Thank you, Joshua.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua. And I want to sort of talk about something else that I feel like a lot of younger people have trouble with, and it's something that you need to learn. But I do feel like there's a lot of gray area here, and that would be boundaries. Boundaries at work, boundaries in friendships, family, relationships. But sometimes I feel like people take boundaries a little too far in work. Where I understand people have boundaries, but sometimes you still need to have respect for the work or certain people. I just feel like sometimes people don't really understand a boundary and how to find it in a healthy way and how to speak to another person about it in a healthy way.
Yeah. So, something that I could just say off the back about this is, boundaries are not telling someone to act a certain way. A lot of people make that mistake. Like, I'm setting a boundary. You need to do this. Okay, that's not a boundary. You're telling someone to change themselves, right, for you, so you're more comfortable. That's not setting a personal boundary. Setting a personal boundary is saying, hey, you know, what's happening right now, how we're relating right now doesn't work for me, right? So if you want to relate to me, like this no longer works. And so you're making the decision, if they show up how they're showing up, you are going to leave that way of relating. You're not forcing them to do anything. You're not commanding them to do anything. You're just letting them know this doesn't work.
Yeah.
If you want to relate with me and be in a relationship with me, that's not going to work for me. And then they can decide if that works for them. So when you're setting boundaries, you know, someone doesn't have to follow them. And if they don't want to follow them, then they don't get to be in your space.
Yeah.
In the most simple, basic terms. And again, you know, it can get complicated when we go into examples.
Yeah, because sometimes I just feel like when people, I love somebody with boundaries, right? But there's just a way to handle it in certain situations of like, I just think that sometimes it gets with work, you know, of
Like what's an example?
You can have, I feel like modern day, when I was working in PR in 2013, when I started, there were no boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Like I was the devil wears Prada. I was hustling. I was going around New York City. It was a lot, right? And I definitely should have had boundaries. But now, modern day, I feel like Gen Z, and I love Gen Z to death, but I do feel like they're a little more like vocal with like, this is what I want. It needs to be this way. I'm setting a boundary. These are my terms. But to also be understanding of how things need to be to run a successful business.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, that comes down to, you know, you get to step into, it's okay if they see you as a villain, right? Like that's a new
You
thing
think
too.
so?
Hey,
That is like my biggest
absolutely.
fear.
Absolutely. And that comes with the concept of self-love, right? You're learning to love yourself even if someone sees you in a negative light. Right?
As long as you know
that's
that you have
huge.
good intentions, right?
Exactly. And someone is going to look at you and see you in a way that's totally their projection. That's totally through their lenses, and you have no control over that, right? And as bosses and business owners and running, you know, businesses, we have to make decisions and set our own boundaries and give directives that might not work for some people, right? Or that people might not understand because they don't see the overall picture of a business. They don't see where it's going, and they might complain about it. They might fight it. They might push against it for a variety of reasons, right? That they just don't have all the information, that it's not their business, so they don't care as much, that they are lazy, that, you know, that they are prioritizing other things, that they don't share in the same vision, that they're just not in alignment with the business at all. But so whatever the reason is, they're pushing against something that you want or something that you are desiring for the business. That's an opportunity to be like, well, it's okay if you don't get it. It's okay if you see me as a villain. It's okay because I'm in integrity. I'm in integrity with my business, and that's really hard. That's a whole nother layer of self-love that I had to learn too in the past couple years, right? Someone seeing you as bad because it's their own story. It's in their own projection of you, and being okay with it. Being okay with it because you know that you're showing up in integrity. And that's very hard for most human beings.
Because we're all people pleasers. So,
Yep.
yeah, I do feel like a lot of the times in situations, there's somebody who is compromising their terms and boundaries for other people's so that they're happy because they're a people pleaser. But then when you're just giving everybody what they want all the time and you're not focusing on yourself, then the business will not be as successful or the relationship will not be as beautiful and healthy.
Yeah, and that's not to say that we can't have conversations with people and, you know, and healthy conversations around the direction of business and explain why we're doing something. yes, the people pleasing is crazy. It's wild. If we can get
Yeah.
over that, if we can get over that, wow. Imagine the freedom.
Yeah.
It unlocks something in you. It unlocks this like unfuckwithable energy.
I love that. Yeah,
It's
that is
like
good. That is my
unfuckwithable.
2024 goal, is to just be like, just okay to put my boundaries down and my terms down, because when you work with so many people, you just are like, I want you all to be happy, and I'll compromise my happiness and my beliefs to make sure everyone else around me is happy. And something that I am working on recently is that I have to be happy as well.
Yes,
you
and
know?
it starts from the top. And that's where it starts, and that energy feeds down into the community that you're cultivating and creating, and it starts with truth, explaining why things need to be done, and being honest. And sometimes it's hard. There's, again, truth is hard to hear. Sometimes people don't like it, and they might push against it, and that's okay. You don't have to please everyone. You don't have to make everyone happy, nor can you. You can't make anyone happy. You can't make anyone do anything. That's just the victim mindset again, right?
Yeah.
They choose it.
True.
They can find the happiness. They choose to show up in joy, in abundance, in inspiration. That's their choice. We can't make anyone do anything. We can't make anyone feel any way. That's, it's crazy when you really think about that.
Can only control yourself and how you handle situations and the outcome and everything. Exactly. Yes. Wow. Thank you for that little therapy session. I needed that.
Yeah, I'm talking to myself too.
I'm just wow, this is so insightful. I knew I am going to have one more question before we wrap up, but I sort of I had this intuitive thought, not like to ask you these questions, like it was meant to be. And hearing your answers, I was like, I knew exactly what I was doing. You are just so beautiful in your lessons. I'm like, wow, this is great. I'm so excited for everyone to listen to this, because these questions and your responses are going to resonate with everybody, no matter the age too. And obviously, through your practices every day, you are trying to live your best life, right? You're trying to have a blissful life, a beautiful partnership, and to heal every day. And I know that these listeners are trying to do the same. Is there any advice or practices that you could recommend to somebody who just wants to find bliss in their life and to never let that go? It's obviously it's a never-ending practice, right? So what is some advice or tips and tricks that you can share?
I think, we already touched on it, is the acceptance that life is difficult, and start there. And know that you can feel bliss and peace even when life is lifing. You can feel the bliss and peace even when you lose a job, even when a relationship ends, even when death happens, even when you experience grief and intense emotion. At the same time, you can hold appreciation, peace, bliss, gratitude, love. You can hold both at the same time. Okay. And a lot of people think that you can't have both. They only want bliss, or if they feel grief, they can't feel that expansive peace. And I'm here to say I've learned, in my own experience, I can hold both, and it's beautiful. I can go through all the emotions. I can feel all the emotions and still show up and know that this too shall pass, that life will change, that the next chapter is around the corner, and you are supported. And I feel that I am supported. I know that I'm supported. And I just keep showing up, and I know that every step I take, the earth is going to meet my foot, and that's all I can do. It's just one step at a time.
Yeah, no, that is great. Just to understand that change is inevitable and to be welcoming. And even though something negative is happening, you have to appreciate it, I'm just saying all my learnings back
Yeah.
so that you can welcome more of the good into your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was
And
great.
that's what I'm doing right now. We have been, working for the past year and a half on our ranch, and we might lose everything. We might lose everything. And that's a really scary, scary thought. And, Joshua and I look at each other and what are we going to do? Just stick our head in the sand and cry about it? No, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep living life and keep showing up and sharing our story and meeting inspiring people and surrounding ourselves with people who are full of joy, who are empowering, who are smiling. And that's how we got here. We live in Malibu. We want to start a family. We're opening a yoga studio up together, and life is good. It's good if you just keep going. You just got to keep showing up.
Just keep showing up.
Keep showing up.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I will link all of your website and socials below, and everyone can check you out. But this conversation was so beautiful and valuable. So I do appreciate you coming on and sharing all of your wisdom.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was so lovely to chat. And yeah, again, I'm talking to myself too. We're always learning. I'm always forever a student. And I'm humbly here in Earth School.
Earth School. I love it.
We're in Earth School together.
Yeah. All right. Well, until next time, y'all.